Before Donald Trump showed up, Tim Miller was one of the most in-demand hired guns in Washington, D.C., working behind the scenes to help prominent Republicans like John McCain and Jeb Bush not get elected president. But today, he identifies as a very particular kind of conservative. He's one of those never-Trumpers. These are people who have supported Republicans in the past, but Donald Trump was a step too far. Yeah, they were cool with the lowering taxes on the rich and cutting programs for the poor, but they didn't want it to be so damn mean. Even though Tim and I have some political differences, I wanted to have a good faith conversation about our current political moment and how the evolution of the Republican Party led us to where we are today. We've been trying to get more conservative voices on the show. So thank you for pulling up. And I do want to say this. I don't want to put words in your mouth right now. But how would you identify now politically? How do you say, I mean, are we Republican light? Are we conservative Democrat?
Yeah, I've kind of,
aspiring Canadian?
Too cold. I'm going south if I got to leave.
Okay, got it.
This is where I'm at, man. I think that the most acute crisis that we have right now is Donald Trump and his movement. And I think that it has a chance of tearing down everything that we hold dear, whether you are a progressive leftist or whether you are a never-Trumper conservative or like anything in between. And I think that in conversations, like I'm trying to find common ground with anybody that fits within that rubric, and we can focus on that. And maybe that common ground actually isn't, in this moment, like a shared positive vision for what's to come, but it is a shared negative polarization towards what Donald Trump and his ilk are doing. And I think that's it's a good step one.
You talk about common ground, and I remember the kind of, so I'm 39, the common political conversation that was around finding common ground, being bipartisan, reaching across the aisle. You're part of the original kind of movement of what I would call 80s, 90s, and 2000s Republicanism. You used to work for Jeb Bush and John McCain. We're going to get into that.
My people are gone.
but I want to ask you, where did Trump lose you? What part of Donald Trump's policy positions or rhetoric, when did he get you to hop off the train?
The moment he opened his mouth, pretty much. There's an old quote you could probably find of Trump shitting on me back in 2012, before he even ran in 2016, because he was flirting with running. He was trying to have a debate. I was working for John Huntsman at the time. He was the most moderate of the Republicans in that field. We finished in last place, which was kind of an early warning sign that I was maybe misaligned from the party, because me and Huntsman agreed on everything. So anyway, Trump wanted to host a debate, and I put out a statement on behalf of Huntsman that was like, we would never go to a debate that this clown is hosting or something.
Is it on Twitter, or where did you guys put it?
I know, it's like, this is old days, man. I sent a statement to the reporter for ABC News.
No way.
And the ABC News reporter called Trump, and Trump's like, Tim Miller is a loser, and we'll never hear from him again, and same with John Huntsman. I don't have the exact quote memorized, but it's something to that effect. So when he came down the escalator, I was standing outside of Bed Bath & Beyond, because I just moved to Miami to work for Jeb, and I was screaming one at a time at Jake Tapper and Sean Hannity and everybody about, like, why are you giving this guy coverage? Fuck you. Like, he's a joke. He's a clown. So from minute one, like, he was a nothing for me. In particular, though, it is like the cruelty and the racism and the un-American view of like immigration. Because like to me, like my origin story, I'm a little older than you, but like, so you were around for Elian, were you? Elian Gonzalez, Cuban boy?
Yeah, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
Like this was like I'm coming into politics in the 90s as a young person, and I loved like the shining city on a hill,
Totally.
America's the land of milk and honey, and like this big thing happens where this boy, floats across the Gulf and is fleeing communism, comes to America, and it's the Clinton administration then that like raid his house with guns pointing at him, and they're like, no, you got to go back. I was like, no, this is bullshit. We should be welcoming people. This is the Statue of Liberty.
Do you remember having that feeling as a young man?
Yeah, I was like, this was like what drew me to the Republican Party. Some of the other stuff, but it was like Republicans love America and like think that this part of America, that we're this melting pot where people come from everywhere to achieve their dream. Like I loved all that corny stuff, right?
Totally.
And so Trump is like anathema to that. So like that core element to me of what being American is. His opening announcement speech was about rapists and murderers, and they have cantaloupe legs, and like how we all need to send them all back, and we need to build a wall.
Right.
And I just find that type of politics like despicable.
Where you were in your late 20s and 30s, where you were climbing the ranks in your political career.
Okay.
I want to kind of get into the mindset, because I grew up in Northern California, which is progressive, but also there is a very strong conservative base. And the way I identify a lot of my friends and their parents that were conservative, it's just kind of classic old school Republican. You know, they love Jesus, they're not so cool with Jesus.
Yeah.
Do you kind of get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would define that as old school Republican, but all right. I know the type.
Yeah. What part of you identified with the kind of old school Republicanism?
So two things that are happening. One is earnest and one is very cynical that were happening at the same time. So I'm just going to be candid with you.
Sure.
The earnest part was, like I said, the Reagan shining city on the hill stuff. Yeah. America's great. I loved.
Yeah.
The more I've met some rich people, I found out that most of them aren't like my dad. But my dad was like, worked really hard, up from his bootstraps.
Right.
Like he should feel like he should get to keep the money that he earned, right?
Yeah.
I butt into that. I do think a lot of stuff the government does is kind of dumb, right? So like that part was like the initial thing that appealed me, like those kind of elements, less the Jesus part.
Sure.
And then what really happened was in the early 2000s when I started into politics, like the stakes felt pretty low, man.
Sure.
I love sports. I started to think about it like sports. Like I wanted to win. I liked the competition of it. And I was like, I'm going to fight for my team, and we're going to try to win, and, you know, whatever happens, happens. And I obviously look back on this with some regret, but I think that was like a very common thing.
To give you a little bit of credit here, though, you have been consistently anti-Trump for a very long time. In 2015, at the primaries, apparently you sparred with Corey Lewandowski.
Oh, yeah.
Who was one of, I guess, you know, maybe 18 campaign managers that he's had at any given point.
He was the first.
What happened? He hip-checked you?
He hip-checked me, yeah. So, look, I'm just going to step back 1 second to give people context. So Jeb drops out.
Yes.
Womp womp. The next day, some rich guys call me, and they're like, we need a point person to be the spokesperson for like a Republicans, Conservatives Against Trump PAC. It was called Our Principles PAC. And I was like, hell yeah. And like everybody in my life was like, you're crazy. Like why? What if he wins? And like then you'll be ostracized. I'm like, this asshole's not gonna win. And if so, fuck him. So I just did it. Like I quit. The Jeb thing ended. I was on the beach one day and I started the anti-Trump spokesman thing the next day. And so what I started to do is basically troll him. Like I was going on TV and I was sparring with other Trump surrogates, and then I would go to the debates into the spin room, and I'd like follow him around and like, you know, troll him, try to get in his thing.
Like you had the
I had the badge.
You had the badge, and so you were just like, okay, it still works.
I had the badge. In one of the cases, I knew the girl in charge of the badges, and I buttered her up, and she gave me a VIP into a section I shouldn't have been in.
Got it.
Trump was coming towards me, and I just see her look and be like, oh shit. Then we started yelling at each other, and Trump's like, nice job with Jeb. Nice job on MSNBC. Nice job with Jeb. You're a loser. And I was like,
so
you make
remember
all your ties in China. Oh, yeah. He spotted me. Trump watches TV more than anybody. Like, I wasn't even on TV that much back then. But, like, Trump knew me from daytime MSNBC hits. He
Still
knows
watching linear cable.
He knows the whole roster. Jacob Soboroff, you know, he could name them. He could go down the list. Katie
Soboroff.
Tur, he knows all of them.
So
he can drop
like,
the whole
Soboroff's
list.
got great hair, but I can't fucking stand that guy.
Exactly.
Shout out to Jacob.
Yeah.
You got great hair.
He can do deep cuts.
Sure. How did you feel when that kind of hip check happened in a press room?
His breath was really bad is the thing that like really is what I remember the most.
Okay.
Like Corey had very bad rancid breath. At first I got kind of mad. I got like my back up a little bit.
Do you want to drop the gloves?
Well, I haven't been in a lot of fights. I'm gay. You know, most of the fights I was in high school and college were usually my mouth followed by like my friends' fists. Not very many with my fists. I don't want to try to pretend like I'm a tough guy. I'm like, fuck, what should I do? And then I like looked around. And I was like, oh, wait, everybody saw that, right? And so I started smiling because I was kind of like, oh, yeah, that's going to be bad for you. You know, you're going to have to deal with the story tomorrow of all these reporters writing about how, like, you randomly assaulted me. And it was, like, around a time he also had, like, sexually assaulted a woman. Back in those days, I thought there would be accountability for things such as this. I was like, maybe Corey will suffer consequences from, you know, that type of behavior. Yeah. Didn't turn out to really be the case.
Uniquely Teflon in that way. Yeah. I want to also talk to you about this. Before you got here, I just really was meaning to ask you, what was it specifically about both Jeb Bush and John McCain that made you go, hey, look, I gotta go all in, and I'm gonna go to the distance with this guy? There has to be something extremely compelling about their kind of philosophy or who they are or what they're fighting for.
I was younger for McCain, and to be honest, if it was McCain, it was more of the cynical side. I was really ambitious, and he was kind of the favorite early in 2008. And but man, when McCain really got me was I had been kind of thoughtlessly pro Guantanamo, just like not like actively pro. It's not like I had a Guantanamo, tattoo or T-shirt, like F these guys. But I was like, I don't know, this seems probably better than not.
But what was the reasoning? The reasoning was that there just needed to be an island that was essentially a black site that denied human beings fair trials or rights.
The reason was these guys. The reason was these guys bombed us. And like we got to hold them to accountable. We got to do what we have to do. What we have to do. And what are we going to do? Bring these guys into courts in America? A lot of these guys aren't in America. Like, what is the option? And you weren't familiar
with the ICC or the ICJ?
Well, I was familiar with it, Hasan. As I said, I was thoughtlessly pro Guantanamo. McCain gives a town hall. When I first started working for him, when somebody asked him about that, why are you against this? Like, America, hell yeah. And he gave like the best, most thoughtful answer, like going back to his service and his time in the Hanoi Hilton and how this is not America and how America is better than this. And like, man, I thought that was such a bold thing to do, like in a Republican primary when it's like Bush was still kind of popular then. It wasn't like these days. And like his like willingness to just kind of F it and be honest and be himself and make these like appeals to the better angels of the country, he earned my love that day. And so I went to the mat for him all the way through the end. Jeb, man, the Jeb thing was interesting because I was more of like a, whatever, this is going to humble brag. Like I was more of like a hot commodity then. Like all of them wanted me basically, just because to do the PR flacking bullshit. And so I met with all of them. I met with Scott Walker and I always asked them kind of the question I didn't know that you're supposed to ask politicians, which is like, why do you want to be president? Like, what's the reason? The question Ted Kennedy famously failed. And Scott Walker's answer honestly could have been given by like the college Republican head at UW La Crosse. I mean, it had like zero depth or anything, like none of the McCain stuff. And I followed up with him and I was like, but I hear that you on the talking points, but like, why you? And he goes, isn't that why I'm hiring you? And I was like, No, I'm 32. Right. I don't know shit. Yeah. Like you're hiring me to spin.
Like you're the one that needs to give me the vision, the purpose, the direction.
I met with Jeb, man, and Jeb knew what he wanted. Me and Jeb didn't agree on every issue, but Jeb had been governor of Florida. He really did care about people. He thought that his policy vision, was going to like help people get more economic success, and he was genuine about it. He cared about it. He wanted to have policy fights. It's like opposite from McCain. Like I love Jeb in private. Like in private, he was super just curious and like wanted to be the best, like actual president policy-wise he could be. Like progressives wouldn't have liked the policies, but that he thought, that you could convince him, and I loved that about him.
You remind me of something that it just again it rings true with so many people that I grew up with that are still lifelong Republicans. There is this vision of the old school republicanism that they loved. They were totally cool with the tax cuts for the rich and the bombing of Iran and the Nicaraguan death squads. But they're like, you know what? At least Nancy and Ronald Reagan were sweet people. They didn't curse. This is the kind of the way you're describing.
Some other good stuff.
This is kind of the way you're describing Jeb and the Bush family.
Yeah,
a little bit.
Am
I assessing that right?
Well, I mean, I would have maybe put it a little more generously. Okay. But yes, there was a decorum. He cared. Like he wanted what was best for people. Trump is like a malignant narcissist. He doesn't care about anybody except Trump. Like Jeb really did. He really wanted schools to be better. Not everybody was going to like what his proposals for how to do that. Yeah. Like when the Florida criminal justice system was broke, he went and spent like 6 months in between campaigns, like sitting in children's court hearings and, like the court hearings for people that were like getting treated poorly by the system and like meeting with them. Like he cared. He fucking cared. He did think the government should be smaller. He did want tax cuts for rich people. I've become less sympathetic to that as I've met more rich people in the post-Jeb era. But like at the time, I felt like he would do a good job at the job of president, the blocking and tackling part. Obviously, like he wasn't as good at the campaigning part.
Sure. I try to on this show, and this is difficult.
Okay.
But it's kind of who I am, man. I try to have an optimistic worldview. I try to take a longer, dare I say, S&P 500 view of optimism. Also think, because I have 2 kids, 7 and 5, hey, look, I have to at least help participate and be part of something that is better for them. Nihilism is kind of a coward's choice out, and it would be irresponsible for me as a father to them if I actually didn't believe and try to make things better in the small ways that I can. That being said, I've seen your other interviews. You talk your shit. So I've taken 5 milligrams of Xanax. I am ready for you to be my human doom scroll and talk about where we're at right now. What is the worst case scenario of what we're going through right now that is uniquely fucking crazy?
I don't think what people are really prepared for is if the dollar is no longer the world reserve currency.
Yes.
Like, a lot of the benefits we've gained from the U.S. world order are going to start to go away real fucking fast. I kind of think we're already here. Like, I think that the world is going to get reordered around us. The Europeans and the Canadians and the Australians are going to think they're more reliable partners. The Russians and the Chinese are never going to be reliable partners for us. And I think that we're going to be very alone, and I think that we're going to decline economically in ways that's going to hurt a lot of people. And I think we probably are going to end up in a place like where kind of my middle, like not my optimistic scenario, but my middle scenario is that like we retrench and become more like a France or a Germany, but without the like social democracy obligations. But I just mean like in the and like what role we play, like where we're kind of just like one of the other nations. I think potentially it could turn into more like a Turkey or a Hungary type situation.
Oh wow, that's a big gap.
Yeah, oh yeah, quite a big gap. Yeah, and they're both significantly worse than our current
France
situation.
to Turkey is a pretty
yeah.
big gap in
Yeah.
what.
Yeah, I'm saying like
be.
France is kind of like my like good, like that's a good outcome I think for me. Ostensibly there's another media tour happening around the Abundance guys, Ezra and them, like they're.
We had them on
they,
show.
oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
They're envisioning a future that's like even more optimistic for our country, where people are, where there's more wealth that is distributed to people at all scales of the income bracket, and we're solving a lot of problems and solving health problems, and AI is leading us to a new future. Like I don't know, man. I think that it's much more likely right now that we're in a retrenchment mode.
Why don't any hardcore Trump supporters believe any of what you're saying? Why do they have this sort of you don't get it.gov interpretation of all these warning signs?
Yeah.
The 4D chess people.
Yeah. Well, some of them are in a cult. And I don't know if you've had a friend in your life who has maybe not gotten into a cult, but like, gotten financially into a bad situation. Like they cut it, somebody told them they could get in early on this new thing, and they gave a little more money than they should have. And
hardcore Bitcoin heads had this during COVID. Sure.
Yeah. And then you go to them and be like, you got scammed. What's their reaction going to be? To get mad at the person that scammed them, or get mad at you? Most of the time they get mad at you. And so I don't think that like they're going to listen to I don't think I'm a credible messenger, or you for that matter, or anybody that has been anti-Trump. So some of them are in a cult and have gotten scammed and don't want to be told. Others of them actually haven't suffered consequences yet, really, like meaningful ones. Some people had friends and loved ones die of COVID, but they've convinced themselves that was the Chinese, or who knows, a vaccine or whatever. Besides that, like economic consequences, most of them, like, their lives didn't really change that much. Like Trump, maybe they had a little more money to spend before COVID, and then COVID happened, they come out of it, and then they blame Biden, right? And so I do think there are some people who are like,
actually doesn't happen on the left. So, for example, I was living in the Bay Area during the first Obama Hope Tour, and I had friends that had the full Shepherd Ferry poster on the wall, right? But they still wouldn't give him passes on every issue.
Drones.
The drones. Guantanamo Bay, Edward Snowden, they're not standing for it, dare I say. They're still willing to be like, that was fucked up. Yep, fucked up too. Why does that exist perhaps with criticism of Democratic candidates, but specifically with critiques of Trump? It doesn't work. It's quite Teflon. It's like, no, you don't get it.
Yeah. So you got to start by saying part of this is Trump unique, because that wasn't true for Bush. A lot of Republicans had a lot of complaints about Bush, and his numbers did go down with the Republicans.
And those critiques stuck.
Yeah, and this critique stuck. Mm-hmm. I asked a Republican consultant one time, like, this very question, like, what do you think it would take for like the candidates that you consult to be able to feel free to start criticizing Trump?
Right.
And his answer was, when his numbers go down with the core base, because when Bush's numbers went down after Iraq and Katrina, his numbers went down with everybody. Trump, even at his bad times, when his numbers go down with independents and Democrats, the guy said he has Saddam Hussein like numbers out in West Texas. So my guys aren't going to say anything until those numbers go down. So it's a Trump unique thing.
So speaking of Saddam and Gaddafi, and shout out to all the dictators out there, do you think he's going to run for a third term?
Man, I think there's a chance, and that is totally insane and disqualifying. Right? Like, I don't have a crystal ball, but you're telling me that this guy he's going to be 81 then. He's mentally deteriorating. He's losing his grip on power. Might he try something crazy? I don't know. He doesn't seem to me like he wants to go back to, his retirement ranch and paint like W. So I think there's a chance. Is it definite? I don't, who knows? Like, I don't know exactly how things are going to shake out. But I'll tell you this. If I had like showed any people a picture of the Capitol on January 6th at this time, so it would have been April of 2017. And I was like, this is how it ends. Yeah. Everybody would have been like, you're insane. Like, you have Trump rangers. Totally. Like, there's no way it will be like this. So, my view is, I think that the tail risk, like the worst case outcomes, are worse than people can even comprehend right now. Whether that is him running for a third term or some other bad outcome, I don't know.
I want to talk about how we got here, though.
Okay.
Let's talk about your 2022 book, Why We Did It, a travelogue from the Republican Road to Hell. Tim, when did the Republicans take the exit to hell?
I mean, the exit was nominating Trump, but it was a long off-ramp, I guess. I don't know, to beat this metaphor to death. I focused on...
You were doing a lot of drug metaphors, too, in the book, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Did I show a little familiarity?
No, I can tell you the quote, but why don't you answer first?
I focused on the time that I experienced.
Yeah.
Right? I'm sure you could go back and say that people could have seen this with Rush, or people could have seen this with Spiro Agnew, right? Like, there are elements of this that go way back. Buchanan obviously is like a great precursor to this, but he lost, but there's a lot of Trumpism in Buchanan. But for me, it was Palin, because the pick was so obviously she was so obviously disqualifying. It was absurd to think that this person could be president of the United States if a very old president had a health problem, John McCain, like he ended up having. It would have been after a term, but she was clownish. She was, like at least racism adjacent, like maybe downright racist at various times. Did not appreciate the American history and like the types of things that every president of both parties has had, at least in our lifetimes or our parents' lifetimes. So to me, it's like the fact that not only did everybody go along with that, but that the energy was greater at Palin rallies than at McCain rallies. To me, like, that was the germ, where it was like, not only did people go along with this ridiculous person as vice president, but we found out that Republican voters wanted that.
You talk about this in the book. Once the audience began to learn that hard drugs were an option, they weren't going to be interested in the meat or potatoes any longer. They wanted to chase the dragon, and there were enough back alley dealers willing to give it to them. I mean,
that's a good paragraph.
This is a good paragraph written by quite a good writer, Tim Miller. But what was that? Are you saying that kind of that racism, that bigotry was the booger sugar, the devil's dandruff that they started feeding out?
Yeah, the
Heisenberg
chowder.
Blue?
Yeah, the Heisenberg Blue. Yeah, man. The racism is kind of the short way to say it, but really just like this culture war full on. And this goes back to Buchanan. Like, Buchanan gave his convention speech saying that, like, we need to engage in a culture war. That's what this was. So it's across a lot of verticals. Some of it is race, of course. Some of it is misogyny. Some of it is men losing power in society. But it is, it is also what we're seeing now manifest, right? Going after the big DC law firms, fuck those guys, the elites, going after the people with green cards. There's the racism again, right? But like, there is a culture out there of Hollywood and New York, and like, these guys all don't care about you, and we are going to go after them, and we're going to punish them, and we're not going to work with them. So to me, like, that is like, the really, tapping the vein. It's like no more of this, like, oh, we're gonna advance our policies, but we're gonna work with them. No, we're gonna beat them and punish them, and they're gonna suffer what we have suffered, which is this imaginary loss of our culture, etc.
So you were saying that basically, kind of, Sarah Palin was the tremor before the earthquake that was Donald Trump, but McCain famously hated Palin. What specifically about Sarah Palin did he just go like, I'm not into this?
Poor John McCain. I know it's just such a bad call, but he felt like
was it the binoculars and I can see?
I don't know what it was. Look, he felt like he was always defensive of her because it was about him, kind of. You know what I mean? It was about his own choice, and so I think it was pretty obvious to a lot of people, in his inner circle. They were the ones that really hated her. My friend Nicole Wallace, who's now on MS, and Steve Schmidt, and like that crowd, like the top. I was still young then, but like the inner circle. Inner sanctum was like, I think they were just astonished at how both unprepared but also incurious she was. You know, it was like, it'd be one thing, it's like we pick somebody that's not quite ready, but they care about this country and they care about the Constitution, they care about the job, and it's like, put me through boot camp, coach. Right. Like, I'm going to get ready. And she was kind of like, whatever.
But now when you look at that, do you ever just go like, you know what? Like Sarah Palin walked so that Marjorie Taylor Greene could run. God, yeah. Where you're just like, I saw the blueprint here.
I think that Sarah Palin would have won the Republican primary in 2012 if she ran. I'm convinced of it.
You really believe it?
Yeah, that's my counterfactual. I don't know if she would have been a better or worse than Trump for everybody or what that would have meant for Trump in 2016. But if you look at that field, Romney won with 42%, 45% of the vote, I think. But he's running against, the decaying corpse of Newt Gingrich and Rick Santorum. There was no energy on the populist conservative side. None of those candidates were strong. They had Palin running against Romney. Yeah. You're telling me Romney would have beat her head to head? I think no way.
I want to talk about a particular moment in the book that I just thought was so interesting. Look, I've always had this gut feeling that the country and the powers that be in each political party, the empire at large, kind of knows what it's doing. And the degree to which America says the quiet part out loud is just a volume game. And sometimes, whether it's Sarah Palin or Marjorie Taylor Greene, it's just about turning up the volume. If Sarah Palin was a 7, Marjorie Taylor Greene's a 12. It's just, let's crank it up. But fundamentally, the BPM, the beats, and the lyrics are essentially the same. You talk about a very interesting campaign ad in your book in 2010 that John McCain played during the campaign trail that so represents this volume thing. Yeah. That was a little diet of what we're seeing now. Yeah. Okay? So what we're about to play right now is an old school Republican campaign ad. This is John McCain from 2010 talking about being strong on the border. And he has a pretty famous catchphrase in this ad. Let's take a look.
Drug and human smuggling, home invasions, murder.
We're outmanned. Of all the illegals in America, more than half come through Arizona.
Have we got the right plan?
Plan's perfect. You bring troops, state, county, and local law enforcement together.
And complete the dang fence.
It'll work this time. Senator, you're one of us.
I'm John McCain, and I approve this message.
Yeah, that's not a great ad.
Please explain this half-assed Diet Pepsi version of Build the Wall. What's going on? Because even his look in the commercial is, I'm like, do you want to do this commercial?
No, he didn't want to be there. Okay. You can tell. You could tell.
Brother.
I can tell. He did not.
If he came into screen test, I'd be like, we don't cast him at the producer session.
He didn't want to be there, man. This was a survival ad. Survival of John McCain, which was the party, there was just this animating desire in this moment, and then again now, to target immigrants. And at times it was your people that were on the receiving end, but in that moment in this, it was immigrants were the main group. And there was this huge momentum. God, I wish you would have warned me because I'm blanking on the guy's name, but this this early version of Trump really was primarying him and was gaining momentum.
Kind of like Tea Party guy?
Yeah. This was in the Senate and not in the presidential race. And this was kind of a way to just be can we stop the bleeding here? Am I really going to lose to this guy because people think that I'm going to let every person from Central America into the country? Can I demonstrate that I do want a secure border? And how can I do? How can there be a line that people can remember? It's no, that they can say, at church or whatever, when guys are I can't vote for McCain. They can be yeah, he said he's going to complete the danged fence, Right. And I think that was the thinking behind it. Execution was horrible. So not great. Just really quick though, going back to your original premise about the BPMs.
Yeah, let's talk about that, about the quiet part versus it being out loud. But the lyrics are the same.
Yeah.
It's just how hard they're just fucking jamming.
Yeah, I hear that, man.
Yeah, talk to me. Let's talk.
I've been on Panic Tour. The difference to me, and maybe this is a distinction without a difference, is intentions. And I guess it comes down to the question of do you actually believe that good intentions matter when your actions don't reflect them? Mm-hmm. And I think that that's an open question. I'm open for people to tell me no, that good intentions don't matter, and that the road to hell is paved with them or whatever. But McCain and Bush and the people that were doing it then, they're trying to balance this complicated country, right? And they're trying to say, how can I come up with some policies that will get the people that are rabid, that are nativists off my back, and even get them to support me, while also advancing these broader kind of principles that the vast majority of the country believes in. Yeah. And to me, that's the difference between John McCain and Marjorie Taylor Greene, not the BPMs.
Let's walk through this because I'm trying to unpack this as well. There's a very, very powerful moment where John McCain was at a 2008 town hall.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're familiar with
Oh, yeah,
this.
of course, yeah.
Where that older woman was like, I am not voting for Barack Obama. He's an Arab. Let's take a look at this, the famous He's an Arab clip.
I can't trust Obama. I have read about him, and he's an Arab. He is not. No?
No, ma'am. He's a decent family man, citizen that I just happen to have disagreements with on fundamental issues, and that's what this campaign is all about. He's not. Thank you.
I mean, this is Dr. Frankenstein being attacked by the monster that he created.
For sure.
What did you think about this moment at that time? Take me in the room where this is all happening in 2008. Again, this is your interpretation at that time.
Yeah, at that time, I was always a pessimistic Patty on campaigns, just as I am about the future of Trump. I knew we were going to lose by the time this happened. I knew McCain was going to lose by the time that this happened. And so I was kind of proud of him. Like, I thought it was a good moment. It was nice that he did that. At the same time, I was like among those that were horrified with the Palin stuff. I like the crowd, like the Frankenstein the monster thing. The crowds got out of control that fall. Like, it was untenable. That lady was not an outlier, you know?
Yeah,
and
totally.
McCain wanted to have these town hall type things in their conversations in the campaign. Do you take him out of his element? He wasn't good at speeches, right? So like, how do you manage this? Can you control the questioning better?
Yeah.
You know, like all of that was happening. And it ends. He doesn't let Palin speak at the concession speech, right? To me, that was actually the most moving thing. More than that moment was he goes out to give a concession speech and talks about how he's rooting for Obama and how he wants Obama to win, and some in the crowd start booing. At the concession speech, and he's like telling them no, you know, tamping them down, and he's trying to control this thing. And then Palin wants to go out there, and obviously she would do the opposite, and so they didn't let her.
For me, it's a moment where I'm seeing this, and every kind of brown person that I know that saw this moment was, oh, America is accepting the premise that brown people are terrorists.
I would be more generous to McCain on this. So, in part, man,
But that's
you
just a
do
nice
this
way of saying
you do
that.
this stuff live, like, you know, he's in this moment, like he's freelancing, man. I don't know. I think that he was trying to tamp it down. I don't know that he was accepting the premise. I
She
understand what
said,
you're saying.
I'm not voting for a DEI president. And she goes, ma'am, I promise you he can read. It's the fact that the party is willing to accept the premise. You're just saying the quiet part out loud. It was a little bit quiet there, but we're now just seeing all caps, full tweet.
Can we give somebody credit for trying? I hear you, man. Can we get a participation trophy in here? Man, I understand how it could be viewed that way. I do not think that was his intention. And that goes back to my question about good intentions. It's like, does that matter once you've picked Sarah Palin and once you're running a campaign that uses some of these themes? I would open to the fact that like progressives or liberals would say, no, actually the intentions don't matter. And there's something to be said about knowing your fucking opponent and having them be fully themselves like Donald Trump. And I think that is we're in that moment now. I would prefer the other way.
As someone who worked in that machine, is there something uniquely about the war on terror that radicalized the Republican base?
Obviously, there were some very radical policies that were passed during the war on terror that there's a lot, Republicans have a lot of, like the Republicans that instituted them, some of them at least have regrets about. And I think that there were ways in that moment, in the heat coming after 2001, where it certainly radicalized people, and there was massive overstep, and we could go through all the terrible policies that were executed. I think it's more about nativism. I think that these folks were radicalized by this more than the war on terror. Sure. I think that it was a lot of people who had like a view of the country as being more of like a blood and soil, this is my country, had those kind of impulses tamped down by people that were doing the BPMs lower. And then like we hit this moment where they could get in their phones and they could get from Sarah Palin, they could get from Trump, and they could get from Fox, and that people to encourage and instigate their worst impulses. Yeah. All of that stuff happened kind of after the war on terror. So, you know, again, I'm not trying to minimize the fact that there were people and actions that were were radical within the war on terror, but I think the crisis we're in now kind of happened with this confluence of events, like that was really more towards when that was petering out a little bit.
Do you feel as comfortable with Democrats now as you did with Republicans then?
Maybe more. Like there are certain things that I don't feel comfortable with Democrats, but it's like kind of cute and funny. Like there's like terms and
gotcha.
words.
Okay,
I was
got it.
interviewing John Lovett the other day, and he was talking about solidarity, and I'm like, God, I'm with the solidarity people now. Like that's a little weird, or like
The language stuff.
The language stuff is like a little strange. Some of the abortion stuff makes me a little uncomfortable. But honestly, I was uncomfortable a lot in Republican circles. I was a hired gun. Like my worldview hasn't changed that much. I've gotten maybe slightly more left on various things.
You were also processing some personal stuff for you
Yeah,
as well,
right. That's what I was saying. So I was a moderate Republican who was gay.
Yeah.
And so like there were a lot of times where I was uncomfortable in Republican world. And where I chose I was particular about choosing like what candidates I would work for because I knew I would be uncomfortable. There's not a situation where you could like put me in a room with a Democrat right now where I'd be like, I think I might be uncomfortable in that room, in the way that I was back then.
What options do people have who hate both parties? I think in my lifetime, Democrats as a party and as an institution, they've never been more unpopular in my lifetime.
Yeah.
So where do they go as you make the rounds and you speak with many different people of all kind of political walks? And
Look, I guess I'm sympathetic to that. I would say this. I go back to what I said earlier about what the most acute crisis is. We all got a rash when it comes to the Democrats, and it might be different. Like there's certain things. It might be policy, it might be style, it might be confidence, leadership, tone, but like it's all pretty minor in the grand scheme of things. Like compared to the threat that we face for Donald Trump, and we can't say with confidence that we are sure that we will have a normal democratic election in 3 years. The economy is cratering around us. We are on the side of Russia, I think, in the war with Ukraine. Like across every vertical, like the threats that these guys pose to everybody's day-to-day life, I think are even greater than most people realize unless you're like really hyper engaged on this or hyper radicalized against Trump. If I was those people that don't like either party, what I would say to them is like, the Democrats have this opportunity to remake themselves. Try to help them reimagine that in a way that would get you excited.
As a former person who ran campaigns, pitch it to me. What are those things? Because I'm sure you've been thinking about it, about all the plane trips you're taking where you're like, look, this is how you should say it.
Well, I would just say the ante before I get to the pitch is be fucking passionate in your anger about Donald Trump. That's the ante. Like be passionate in your anger about what is happening specifically, not like esoteric like democracy. Like he is kidnapping people. That is fucking wrong. His economic policies are hurting people. Like be passionate. He's firing veterans while having a military parade for himself. That's your ante. Now, where do the Democrats go from there? I would say to somebody, find the area that you think that the Democrats have failed, grab onto that and own it. Look at what Bernie did. It's simple. It's the fucking millionaires and the billionaires, and we're going to fight oligarchy. And you can ask Bernie about anything, and he's going to bring it back to that. And he wanted to remake the party in that way. I think in 2028, somebody might be able to remake the party in Bernie's image. I think in 2028, somebody might be able to remake the party in Mark Cuban's image, the image of a billionaire. That's like, we need to make the government actually work and fix things for people. And like, these guys wanted to make America great. They fucking failed. I'm going to make you rich.
So do you think it's really based on the candidate? It's actually not a set of kind of core principles and positions. It's hey, who's on the cover?
The guy on the cover or the woman on the cover, because I'm not of the view that a woman couldn't do it, needs to have either the hat or the whiteboard.
Okay, what is that?
James Carville had the whiteboard. Anybody that's watched the 92 documentary, it's the economy, stupid. Change versus more of the same, and don't forget healthcare. That was his whiteboard. Trump has the fucking hat. What was Kamala's whiteboard or hat? Nobody knows. What was Hillary's whiteboard or hat? Nobody knows.
Okay.
You could ask Hillary and Kamala what their whiteboard or hat is. They wouldn't know. You could ask Joe Biden. He wouldn't know, right?
Sure.
So it isn't just like, oh, I need a handsome movie star to be on the cover, and it can be anything underneath. It's got to be a person that has a vision that they can sum up. They can describe, here is what we need to do.
Andrew Yang, and I've interviewed him before, he was all whiteboard.
Yeah.
And he had a hat that said math on it.
Yeah.
Didn't work.
Yeah, well, what is math, though? It's a bad hat. I don't think any hat
I think
could
he was
work.
just like make America smart again, make America read again. Let's,
Okay,
like,
let me be
let's
clear.
be-
Let me be clear.
Let's be the
the
and
hat.
let's give people $1,000. Like those
Yeah.
are some pretty these were some pretty compelling points.
The hat or the whiteboard is necessary but not sufficient for success.
Got it.
You can have a bad hat, you can have a bad whiteboard.
Okay.
My point is, I wish the Democrats.
My man had a hat, a whiteboard, and a fucking USA scarf. So I will not tolerate.
It was a good effort.
The Andrew Yang slate. Oh, Childish Gambino. Donald Glover was the creative director for his campaign. That would be the equivalent of being like, Bill Clinton's 1992 campaign is being ran by Prince.
Yeah.
Like, he's doing the creative direction, he's doing the merch. I'd be like, God damn, he just did the Batman soundtrack.
Yeah.
God damn.
My point is, man, I think that rather than being like, oh, these Democrats suck, like, why not channel it towards, look, I gave you the negative version of when we were sitting in this chair in April 2017, nobody would have believed the insurrection.
Yeah.
What about the positive version? Sitting in this chair in April 2005, you would have said I was insane if I told you, you know who's going to be the president next? Barack Hussein Obama. He's going to run against the Iraq War. And he's going to run on bringing the country together. And there's going to be art posters. People be like, that's crazy. The country wants big change. And somebody who has a vision and like passion and is going to do it different, is going to be able to define themselves differently from like this era of Clinton through Biden through Harris, could succeed. And I really, my point is, like, I believe that person could be center left, or I think they could be populist left. Somebody's got to like grab it by the horns, and we kind of have to see how things shake out.
What's your mission right now? Because I see
Yeah.
there's a lot of videos and you're very upset. YouTube has
you.
a lot of videos of you being very outraged right now.
Are you not upset?
I'm upset, but again, my natural tendency, I don't know why it is. It's comes from a place of like, okay, where do we go from here? And maybe that is like the kind of child of immigrants kind of mentality of like, okay, bad things are happening, new information is coming. How do we pivot, and where do we go from here?
I'm gonna try to use my experience on the dark side for good. Is my mission now, honestly. Like I think that Democrats, anti-Trump, pro-democracy people, corporations, lawyers, these guys need fucking balls. They need a backbone. They need to know how to fight. They need to have the courage to fight. They need to know how to use the strategies that Fox uses to get people riled up about stupid shit, like the Bud Light can.
Yeah.
Use those same strategies to get riled up about the fact that we kidnapped a makeup artist and sent him to a concentration camp in El Salvador. Why can't Andre, the makeup artist, why can't he be a rallying point for people to oppose this administration? Why can't that then help snowball what will eventually be these guys' downfalls or snowball into a mass movement? Again, I think it could be a lot of different things. I think my job is to, tell people what's happening, but also help them find their outrage. Yeah. Everyone should be, there's a lot to be mad about right now. And I think that like there is a tendency towards sanguineness or towards fear. I want people to be a little bit less inclined towards fear or towards checking out and more inclined towards punching back, not literally Cash Patel.
One of the things you do is you will debate and you will converse with anyone.
Hell yeah.
Like you will debate Tomi Lahren.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, sometimes because it's fun.
Okay.
I don't want to say it because there's a higher purpose to it.
Gotcha. So you're also running on pettiness. You got
Yeah,
that-
I do.
yeah,
I
that-
run on petty.
That 87 grade capital
Yeah.
P pettiness, maybe some 89. depending on how
Yeah,
you're
I
feeling.
run on petty, and
Okay.
I accept those invitations more when I'm feeling particularly petty.
Okay,
you
got
know,
it.
so some of it is an outlet. But man, more than that though, we live in a very fractured world, and I think that people need to hear from the other side.
Yeah.
And like hear another point of view, hear other perspectives, and hash it out. And I think that's probably less useful on the Tomi
The
Lahren
idea
show.
of the exchange of ideas.
Yeah, than it is on some other stuff that I want to do. I think it's particularly true with young men right now. I think that young guys are like hearing a lot from people that are giving them bad information. I want to try to chop it up and be like, I can talk to you about like the markets and fucking basketball and like what, Zen. Like I can chop it up like with you guys. Like, I don't know, I might be gay, but I know what's happening. Sure. And just like giving people a different perspective, I think is helpful. Revealing the weaknesses of their arguments, I think is useful. Yeah. And then there's also feeding the petty. All those purposes I think are valuable.
And I don't have the answer to it because I'm trying to identify what is happening right now. Because you had Lincoln Douglas debate, right? You have the famous I mean, you had the famous Chomsky-Buckley debate. You had the James Baldwin, William F. Buckley debate, right? These are like iconic. And some people would argue that Buckley was a crypto-fascist.
Yeah. I don't think me versus Tomi.
And now we're Miller
me versus Dan Crenshaw.
Like, you know what I mean? Like,
me versus Dan Crenshaw was pretty good, though. That was useful because, to me, it revealed something about the ways that people that are enabling Trump are lying to themselves. And maybe by showing people that are more attuned to the Dan Crenshaw side of that debate, essentially he's the congressman from Texas with the eye patch. His point was like, basically, Trump isn't going to do all the bad shit that he says. Like, he's just going to be a normal Republican, and this guy over here with his pearls and his screeching is trying to like scare you. And now here we are 3 months later, and like Trump is doing the stuff that the guy with the pearls and the screeching was saying. There's like some value, I think, in having those like hashing that out more than like the food fight shit.
Maybe I disagree a bit because back in the day, and maybe this is the way I felt, like what debate had this aspect of education to it. Like I remember seeing the James Baldwin, William F. Buckley debate, and it made me read Baldwin's work.
Right.
But certainly it also made me realize I was like, William F. Buckley is also an incredibly deeply read, educated person.
Yeah.
But now there's this thing where I don't know what the fuck any of this is.
Yeah.
I think we're screaming at each other in 8-minute chunks and then doing ad reads for ZipRecruiter.com. And I'll tell you why. Because it's this weird thing where both in the Roman Colosseum and the Roman Senate, these things are being combined into one YouTube short.
Yeah.
Here's an exact data point that involves you, my friend.
Oh, no.
Okay? During that Tomi Lahren debate, conversation, screamfest, whatever we want to call it, throwdown. Let's call it a throwdown. The original YouTube video of your debate has 12,000 views. Your video about the debate titled, Watch Tim Miller Destroy MAGA YouTuber Tomi Lahren's Pathetic Attacks on Kamala.
I thought we had a rule that we weren't going to read the headlines.
Has 1.4 million views.
All right. Nailed
So
it.
it worked. It worked, clearly. And
Nailed
look,
it.
I'm not judging. Your boy is jockeying for YouTube eyeballs like everybody
We're
else.
in the game.
But I was like, man, it also simultaneously, bro, it makes me so sad.
I mean, look, the Tomi Lahren debate, I'm not going to sit over here and be like, you know, Hasan, I think there's some real deep value that I'm bringing. I think that there's a lot of value I'm bringing to the discourse and the culture with that. I do think some of the other things, like going onto other people's platforms, is valuable. But like, man, what's the answer? What do you like?
Sure.
What's the answer? What are you supposed to do? What do you do?
And also, you're using your skill set. You want to try to engage with the world as it is with your skill set, with your experience. You wrote a book, and you're trying to convey your perspective. So, I appreciate you coming on the show and talking about that. But I wanted to know, specifically with Donald Trump, why do so many Republican politicians have a humiliation kink when it comes to DJT? Do you get what I'm saying?
I do.
Like Donald Trump will unload the clip on everyone and anyone in the party that crosses him. He said Ted Cruz's dad killed JFK. He called Ted Cruz's wife ugly. He made fun of Marco Rubio's height. He insulted Elon Musk in 2022.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at that. This was on Truth Social. When Elon Musk came to the White House asking me for help on all of his many subsidized projects, whether it's electric cars that don't drive long enough, driverless cars that crash, or rocket ships to nowhere, without which subsidies he'd be worthless, and telling me how he was a big Trump fan and Republican, I could have said, drop to your knees and beg, and he would have done it. My God, my man is cooking. Holy shit, drop to your knees and beg. Why do so many Republicans just put their dignity through a wood chipper?
Yeah. I don't know that it's a kink in the literal sense for anyone except Ted Cruz. He might be jerking off to Donald Trump insulting him. I don't think it's true for the rest of them. The answer for the rest of them, man, is like every kind of culture has this drug, right? You said I do all the drug references. You know, like for New York, it's money, right, and power. Yeah. Hollywood, it's fame. Like in DC, it's like kind of like being around the man, like access. It's like having power comes with responsibility. Right. Power is kind of hard. Not a lot of these. Some people really want
access
power.
Like a guest list.
Yeah, dude, they want to be on the fucking president's guest list. They want to be in Air Force One. They want to be in the in the room where it happened. There's a whole fucking musical about this. You know, they want to be in the room where it happened, so they can go home for fucking Thanksgiving and be like, "You won't believe what Trump was saying on the plane." Lindsay just wants to sit next to him in the golf cart. That's literally it. I don't think there's anything else sexual there with Lindsay. I think he just wants to be shotgun in the golf cart. And that is what gives him meaning.
So it's just a guest list thing.
I think it's just a guest list.
Literally, can I be +1 on the guest list?
Yeah, it's pretty cool to be on the guest list.
Is
it's not nothing.
Is the access that great? Because look, man, I've testified in Congress.
Yeah.
Fuck, Congress blows. It's the fucking DMV, and that was before January 6th.
Yeah.
Dude, I saw a mousetrap in Congress. I was like,
yeah,
this is what my taxes are paying for. Furthermore, in the waiting room, they had a Keurig.
Dude,
I'm like, you're not getting me Phils. You're not getting me what? Get me Folgers. I'll take Folgers over a Keurig.
You've been on a private jet in your life?
I have.
Okay. The gap between sitting on the president's private jet and being in steerage on Southwest is pretty significant.
Okay.
So I think that's a lot of it. I wish it was something deeper. But I'm telling you, there's the
There's
resentments.
other ways to get on a private jet, though. There's many different ways. And I'm not even talking about the Epstein stuff. There's many different ways to you can go be Steve Aoki's assistant.
That's true. A couple of these guys, Dan Crenshaw might be interested in that job.
Yeah,
actually.
there's plenty of jobs where you can get on a PJ.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. I got everything, man.
All right.
I thought the book was really interesting, and I wanted your perspective on someone who worked within the machine to tell us how the machine works, and kind of I'm a big fan of zooming out and using history as a thing to give us, data points and sets to go, hey, where do we see the patterns, and where can we kind of zoom out and hopefully find meaning, see things with clarity, and then make decisions accordingly.
So are you judging me on the YouTube thing? Am I getting judged?
No,
are you looking at that YouTube and you're like, man, this is...
Look, for sure, we're going to have to do a really, really fucking dopey YouTube thumbnail for this one.
Yeah.
Former Republican insider tells crazy Jeb Bush stories.
Yeah. That's not even bad enough. We gotta turn that fucking up, man. Okay. We gotta turn the dial up.
Former Republican insider says Lindsey Graham wasn't in it for the Kink.
Here you go.
Tim Miller, ladies and gentlemen.
Man, I thought that was gonna be worse.
Really?
Yeah.
No.
Hurry right away, no delay, stop the day. Make your daddy glad.